Cheers, people of the world. Hello and welcome to Marketing as a Foreign Language, episode 203. Our guest today was a TedX speaker. Yeah, if you want something produced, look no further than to Geoffrey Klein, because he's going to produce it for you. Life is going to throw a couple of curveballs at you. Imagine that your grandfather was a judge. Oh yeah, a judge. It's a big deal. The robes, the whole thing. Any sentence that starts with "Your Honor," it's rough. That's a rough one. And then your father's a judge, right? And so you grow up in this sort of judgy environment. Totally kidding. So anyway, my parents were teachers, and I became a teacher. Imagine that. We see, we model, monkey see, monkey do. So Geoffrey went to law school and then jettisoned out of that. You may be familiar with the titles I'm mentioning now. Mission Impossible 2, Ring Any Bells, Truman Show. Geoffrey's boss was the president of production at Paramount. That's alliteration. Let's go. Lived in that whole world and really learned how to produce things from start to finish. He is currently the owner of 9 Dots, which, if you can envision it, they can produce it. So graphics, videos, all that sort of stuff. It is my pleasure to introduce today's guest on the show, the one, the only, Geoffrey Klein. Let's go.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh man. So is it weird having a parent as a judge? It just seems.
I think, so there's a story behind it, which is, my grandfather never went to college. He was a math whiz and was actually offered free rides, but his family needed him to earn money, so he went to go work at a factory. And one day his friend came and said, "Hey, what are those books?" And his friend said, "Oh, I'm going to law school at night." And my grandfather said, "Well, how much is it?" And he said, "It's $37 a term," which was even cheap back then. He applied and went to law school, and in 1934, at the age of 34, became the youngest lawyer in Pennsylvania history to become a judge. And the record stood until my father broke it at age 32. So not just judges in the family, but record-setting judges. And I used to just sit, we would have dinners often, and they'd be at opposite ends of the table, swapping, legal war stories. But it was fun. Except maybe the time that I had. If you watch my TED Talk, I tell a story about being in court. It's the first thing I talk about. And it makes for interesting times. But yeah, my dad's a good guy, and he has Judge Klein, and then he has Dad, and they're very different.
Oh, of course. I'm reminded of preachers' daughters having a reputation for being wild. What are judges' sons like?
Well, I have 2 brothers, one older, one younger. And I think, again, we try to not get into trouble. And then on the flip side, we like to push the envelope. My brother was a trailblazer for the 2 younger brothers in terms of testing limits and finding out the funny story. So my parents would go away sometimes when we were teenagers, and so my brother would throw parties, and that was fun. And then my parents would come back and things would be a mess and they'd freak out. And so when my younger brother Alex and I, when my brother went off to college, we would have parties. But what we would do is we would take all the furniture from our living room, and we had it in the dining room. We had actually a sliding door. So everything valuable we put in this one room. We'd have the party. But then after the party the next day, we would kind of look at the blank space and be like, where does everything go? And we'd put things back, and my parents would come home and be like, why is the couch there? I'm like, oh, we just felt like, rearranging stuff. So the next time they went out of town, we actually drew a map to make sure things went back in the place. So I guess being the son of a judge, you learn how to not get caught. I'm not sure.
Interesting. So both parents in the house, you grew up 2-parent household?
Yes and no. So my biological mother passed away when I was 7, but my dad got remarried, so I had a stepmother that then adopted me. And so I, tell my kids I had 2 moms. So I came from death and divorce, but had a very nuclear family growing up.
Mm. Yeah, there's a term I refer to often, Malcolm Gladwell term, imminent orphan. You may have heard of that particular term. People who lose a parent early in age and then they transform that pain and suffering into success later in life. Let's talk a little bit about Nine Dots because there's so much to cover. But I want to get a sense of what's going on now. All I know about Nine Dots is that it's visionary and you're not the creative guy, right? So it's
Well, I'll unpack that a little bit.
yeah.
So Nine Dots started about 4.5 years ago when I decided to kind of do my own thing. I was working at an agency. And when we started, we're like, what do you need? My wife and I started, and we're like, what do you need? And so we were a marketing company and I had built relationships, and I would just I know a guy. And then it evolved over those first couple of years. And what I recognized was that there were certain things I like to do within the marketing space. And as a result, things that I thought I was better at. And it was visual content production. So producing graphics and videos and animation in particular. And when you said, I'm not in the conventional thought of an agency, you have kind of the suits and then the creatives. And I'm definitely the suit. But I like to think, although I am not artistic or technical in my creative abilities, I'm certainly very creative. And especially in terms of ideation and coming up with a lot of the concepts for the animations or the videos, that part I really
So it's an execution thing then. So you're able to envision what it would look like. You know what you want. You're just not going to go create that thing.
Yeah, what I often do is I create really bad mock-ups of things, and then I call them kind of Frankenstein designs, where I grab pieces from lots of places, and then send that to a designer to say, "Hey, make this look good."
Okay.
So I think it's as a producer, my job is to understand what the client wants and needs, and then get my creative team to execute on it.
Interesting. So if you are in a meeting with someone, give me an example of a client. So Joe Schmo owns a what and he wants what, and you're going to do what for him?
Okay. So we just finished literally 99.9% an animated video for an ice cream brand.
Is it vegan ice cream?
It is. They have vegan ice cream, but they are not a vegan ice cream.
Excellent.
They've been around for 18 something. Philadelphia, institution, and they have some retail outlets where that are their company, and then they have a lot of wholesale distribution, and they wanted to create an animated video to kind of describe that part of their business. So first thing we did was we met, and the way we start any project is to ask lots of questions. That's my job, is to really listen and understand what it is they're trying to accomplish.
So let me understand the video a little bit better. So
Sure.
A wholesale video, I don't get it. Because when I think video, I think
it was a video for their wholesale distribution.
You're right. I still don't get it. So it goes to their team that are like, well, who's going to see this video and what's the point of the video? I'm so confused.
Okay. So the video, so they sell ice cream at their ice cream shop. They also sell it to restaurants. They sell it to grocery stores. They sell it to other ice cream cafes. And so the audience they're trying to reach are those business owners who have a hotel and restaurant, who own a grocery store.
Right. Would they advertise it on Facebook?
Yeah, that's what they're going to do with it.
Okay, there you go. So demographic targeting via Facebook to owners of restaurants, hotels, etc. And then how far along the line are you on this video? Did you create it?
We delivered a final version to them a couple of days ago. They had 2 tweaks which we've made, and I just need to email the final version to them. So it's
we're not gonna talk about this particular client because it's too specific, but let's talk about a theoretical client, or perhaps a client you've had in the past who's like, actually, it's a little too blue. You know what I mean? Like blue, but not the color blue. It's blue like it's a little too melancholy. So could we make it a little more uplifting, but not too uplifting? Do you find yourself in meetings where this is the kind of thing, and you're like, what are you
Yeah.
even saying to me right now?
So one of the things that we do to try and combat that challenge of uncertainty and wanting to include, we want it to be, motivating, but we also want it to be, not too motivating or whatever, the descriptive feeling they're trying to extract from the audience. And so we listen and ask those questions to try and extract from them what they really want rather than sometimes just what they're saying. And then we have a creative brief. So a lot of times we'll start by sending them questions and asking them questions that they have to be forced to kind of answer in ways where they could have multiple answers. But I think the process of sending them a document that they fill out requires them to take that step, and they're less wishy-washy when you do that. And then one of the things I was going to say about me being creative is the part of the production part in the first instance is creating that story. I'm a big, I believe in the power of story and not just information, but how you craft that information into a narrative, because they've shown that's what's going to get people to understand what you do and remember you. And then marketing, that's kind of what I think the goal is. So we always start with a script, at least in the animation field, before we do draw one picture. And so I have a heavy hand in that in terms of crafting and writing the script. The script's a little different than a normal script in that it has usually like the voiceover on one column and then the illustration suggestions on another. From there, once we approve that, so we don't move forward till they've approved it. So we'll go through a couple rounds, and then we go to the storyboard phase, where we'll understand what kind of style they want. So they want to be more cartoony or more illustrative. And sometimes we'll give them samples to say, this is what it looks like this way versus that way. And then we create the storyboard. And the storyboard, from storyboard to animation, we do full color storyboards so that they really have a sense of what it's going to look like. And so there shouldn't be that many surprises if we've had approval on the storyboard, it's unlikely they're going to say, change that blue to green. They may.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. So, 6-year-old Jeff, right, is in the backyard, I don't know, throwing a stick up into the air and trying to catch it, right? Why does adult Jeff want to do this in particular?
Well, interestingly, I think the creative process is something that as a kid you have, your imagination and ability to be creative is less constrained than when you're an adult. And I like to say that I am older, but not much more mature. So what I do allows me to feed my inner child.
Okay.
That's sort of the easy answer. But I think there's something in I like the idea of taking an idea and using the creative resources that will then help a business. So for me, while I love being creative and being able to have people produce things, it's always about, well, how is this going to help their business? If it doesn't help the business, then it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, and trust me, I own an agency. I'm helping businesses. I get it. If money were no object, would you just be doing some big movie creative thing? You wake up, you got 4.6 million in the bank. Interest rate 3%. You're making like 170 a year, doing nothing, right? And you wake up and you go, okay. Would you still be in this field, or would you just go, I don't know, meditate in a mountaintop? Like, what would you do if money were no object?
I definitely wouldn't go meditate on a mountaintop. I keep trying meditation. It doesn't work.
It's not working right.
I would definitely be doing what I'm doing. I think the difference would be potentially I'd probably be a little more selective in who I did it for. And I would, I'd be probably spending more time with my kids. I do spend family is the most important priority to me, and everything I do is in service to that. So, I still go and see a lot of their events, whether it's sports or otherwise. But I think I would probably, I'd still be doing what I'm doing. I think I would just, because I love it. I love producing things. And for me, that's not always been the case. And I think once you find that thing that you enjoy doing, you just don't want to stop. For me, I think the only difference also, if I didn't have to worry about money, I would try and I might do a little less of the things I don't like to do, in terms of running the business.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I would
Well,
just
you
get
don't
to
want
put,
you don't want to do invoicing? That's weird.
yeah, like not really. It doesn't bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah,
When they
that's so
pay, it
weird.
does, but not the invoicing part.
Yeah, that's so weird, Jeff, that you don't like invoicing.
I
It's
know.
my
I'm
favorite
not.
part. It's my calling. I was meant to come to planet
Hey,
Earth
some people like their
to
bookkeepers who love it.
invoice. Yeah, just
Not really.
tracking down money. Um, yeah, so all right. So Judge, got it. Where'd you grow up?
I was born and bred in Philadelphia, city of
Okay.
brotherly love.
Do you ever take clients outside of Philadelphia, or is it a local deal only?
No, we have clients all over the place. So I've done. Interestingly, the funniest story was that I ended up working for the client was in Europe. The person at the company I was working for was in England, but the headquarters of the company was nearby where I lived. But I
Hmm.
met the person in England, and so it was an odd thing. But yeah, we have clients in LA and really in Chicago. Geography is not a limitation to what we can do, especially in the animation or graphics. If we're doing live video, we don't usually travel to go and shoot stuff. There are companies that do. My feeling is if you're in Austin, Texas, the likelihood that you're going to fly us out there to come and shoot as opposed to find someone in the area, it doesn't always make economic sense. But if someone wants to fly me somewhere, we'll go and produce the video.
Well, of course. So when we're talking about video production, do you have all the gear and the crew to go and shoot some ridiculous high quality
Yeah.
stuff?
So the way we operate, so I don't keep, I have gear, but I don't typically, when I have a project, I'll call one of my team videographers. I have about 3 or 4 videographers that I work with. They have all the gear that you would need. And I'm there, kind of directing, producing/directing. Usually if we're doing some sort of talking head, I'm the one asking the questions. And then in terms of the edit, I usually do like a first edit. So I'm not an editor. So I'll go through the footage and pick out the time sequences that I want, and then send them to the editor and say, okay, let's make this, cut, and then decide where transitions are going to be. So I'm involved in kind of every stage, but again, that technical execution is not what I do. I do have a drone, and I like gadgets. So we were on a shoot recently where I brought my drone because I bring it. Now I have a drone operator that if we were doing a drone video, I would hire and he would come, and he's got
Right.
about 6 drones. So,
Right.
but I have one for fun. But I brought it to the shoot where I wasn't expecting to shoot anything. And it turns out the building was not that interesting. So the normal drone I might do, I wasn't. But when we got into the building, they had a 7,000 square foot warehouse. And so I ended up taking some drone footage of the warehouse. That just
Right.
because I happen to have the drone there, I was like, hey, let me. So it's the gear and all that is usually left to the production team, and they bring what they need.
Mm-hmm. So let's say junior high, high school. Did you ever get into music or art or creative stuff back then?
I think mostly at that point, if I was the creative part was writing. So
Okay.
I did, whether it's poetry or short stories, I like to write. And so I think that was my creative outlet. And I was obsessed with movies, not creating movies, but watching and talking about them.
What's your favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption is the one that I give as my if I had to force one at the top.
Right. It's very, very hard. What are your top 3 movies?
So Shawshank, Cinema Paradiso, which is an Italian movie.
Okay.
And the third one, I probably
Trolls World Tour.
yeah, no. There's a movie called Lost Horizon. That's a Frank Capra movie who made It's a Wonderful Life. And Lost Horizon is a little less known and deals with Shangri-La. Some Shangri-La. And it just, I don't know, it just hit me in a way that I realized. But my list of top 3 has about 10 movies in it. So
right, I get that. Yeah, so I think when people, it's funny to me how life experience will just create a personality. And when people hire us, they're hiring, for example, all the movies you watched. And it doesn't seem like when you're 16, being moved to tears by some movie that you find to be incredibly emotional, powerful, well-made, that you're working. But you are. And so for the folks listening out there, all of these projects that you have as a kid, whether it's like a high school band or just your painting, all this stuff, the sports, I think parents know this intuitively when they look at their kids and they see that they're building what they refer to as character. But you're just doing research for future gigs. There is a direct connection between your love of movies and writing and what you do now. It's I don't want to say it's the same thing. It's pretty similar. So I wonder if young Jeff, was able to like look into the future, if he could have envisioned this sort of outcome. Was there any of that where you envisioned a future and it looked similar to what you're doing, or did you envision something very different?
Well, there was 2 paths that I saw when I was younger, and one was law, which had a very specific, clear path. And then one was making moving pictures. So if you extrapolated that far out, while I may have thought that it was going to be more traditionally in the movie business, which I was a part of, this is pretty close in terms of the kinds of things I'm creating, little stories for businesses. So yeah, I think my younger self would be pretty happy with where I landed, and I'm happy doing it. What I say to my dad when he says, I'm glad you didn't become a lawyer. And I say, well, in the next life, I'll be one in the next life. And I still, while I didn't go to film school and while I didn't pursue that, I think that I am that collective of those different experiences. And I've had a lot of different experiences in a lot of different industries. And I think that's helped informs me when I work with clients, because I understand businesses from a lot of different angles as a result of that. And it fundamentally goes back to something I've liked since I was a kid, which is the power of story. So, why did I love movies so much? Because you could escape into the story and learn and be engaged and have emotions. And that's in marketing still what we're trying to do, is connect with an audience on some level to get them to buy into what it is you can do to help them in their life.
Yeah, which is why I have decided to do long form multiple interviews over years is the goal of this show, which is, we're talking about you in like junior high school. But maybe on interview 6, we get to, when your first kid's born or third kid, or, what I'm saying? Like we
Sure.
actually weave a narrative over time of your life experience. And there's obviously a lot of room in advertising in 2021 for Instagram post X, you know what I mean? 3 things you didn't know about whatever, or right. Sexy girl, or look at this delicious plate of food. Like that's not going anywhere. But I think with the mass proliferation of Joe Rogan style, 2.5 hours, that sort of thing, I think there's something that isn't that, but's coming next, which is returning guests, bringing them back over time. People love the idea of those documentaries where they follow kids at like 7 and they come back when they're 15
7
and
Up.
they're 20. Yeah, 7 Up. There you go. So
Michael Apted, who passed away recently, was involved in all of those.
Who?
And I love that concept.
Who? Nick? What?
Michael Apted was one of the directors who was involved on the 7 Up, 21 Up, 28 Up.
Right.
Where they were following those. That's why it was in my mind, because I heard on the radio them talking about it.
Yeah. And for me, if someone's going to hire you, Jeff, like, and you're on episode, let's say 7 of this show, right?
Mhm.
You just say, go back to episode 1.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, right? You just like start at 1 and then just click, 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 throw it on in the background. And then you get a really good sense of who this person is and what they do and why they do it. And for me, because we can just throw stuff off on in the background, people work out with podcasts in the background. They listen to podcasts while they're at work. They listen to podcasts on the commute. That's where we get a lot of our viewership is iTunes, Spotify, Deezer. There's like 12 others. There you have it. It just sort of like subtly influences you. And to me, learning about the life of another human being is a lot like learning a foreign language. You start making connections over time. It is not something you can do in 30 minutes. It's just it's never going to happen. Can't do it in an hour. And I would argue you can't do it in 2.5 hours, like Joe Rogan style. Like you can cover a lot of topics and that's cool. But yeah, I'm all about, so that's my thesis, is that in 2021 and moving forward, it's finally time for small business owners and creatives and people that want to be guests on shows to have an opportunity to tell their story over months and years, and to really like weave something over time.
I love that. For me, it's because it's narrative. So whether you're getting a piece of the story now, and then it's tune in the next time to learn more.
That's right. And then we're gonna start doing panels too, which is exciting. So like let's say you and 4 or 5 other guests that have been on the show. But the through line is that you can see who's going to be on the show, and then you can go research them. And I know all of them because I've interviewed all of them, and done like life story. Oh, you as a kid were like that, and you as a kid were like that, and you two have this in common, and you and this and that. So this is a live show that intends to build a community.
That's what it's all about. I think it's about, one of the things is that there's so much content out there that you have to be discerning to a certain degree and find the type of stuff you like. And I think what's great about your concept is that if people like your show and like a particular guest, it's not like, oh, I wish we had another episode.
That's right.
It's kind of like when an episode of a TV show ends and they're like, oh, and so you're allowing people to kind of consume and enjoy that continuing story.
Yeah, it'll be like binge watching. They can binge Jeff. I need more Geoff Klein in my life.
I hope there are not too many people like that. It could be a scary thing.
So 10:58. So we are wrapping up here. I want to make sure that Jeff gets the last word. But before I throw it to him for that, Marketing is a Foreign Language, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, live on the YouTube machine. That's youtube.com/Send It Rising. Where you can chat with us after the fact on youtube.com, on the Send It Rising Internet Marketing Facebook page, iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, and a bunch of other podcast platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, shout out to Geoff Klein. I'm going to give you a chance, Jeff, to be a selfish capitalist now and just pitch your product.
If you're looking to stand out and you want to connect with an audience, telling a story is the most effective way to do that. And the most effective way for you to tell a story is through visual content. So if you're looking to connect your audience, telling a story, whether video, graphics, and animation, they're all powerful ways. And I think even if you don't come and work with me, and I think you should be doing that kind of content, because that is the most effective way that you're going to be able to connect with and engage with that audience that's so important.
Yep, true that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the show for today. Thanks for swinging on by. We will see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks very much.